Single paragraph. In that moment he understood. The world wasn't dying, it was waiting, holding its breath the way a sleeper waits for dawn, clinging stubbornly to a dream that refuses to fade, and the weight of that realization pressed against Arl's chest like a boulder of destiny he had never asked to carry. Yet there he stood, trembling beneath the ruins of the forgotten atrium with the Dawnshard glowing like a miniature sun in his palm, whispering promises of hope and devastation all at once. As he stepped out of the atrium, the sky above him had shifted from molten gold to a bruised violet, the kind that usually appeared only before violent storms, and he knew instantly that the world had felt the Dawnshard awaken, and so did the things that hunted its power. A chilling scream tore across the horizon, not from a creature of flesh but from something older, something woven from the remnants of war between gods and mortals, an echo of the shadow scourge that once consumed entire continents with a whisper. Arl felt the ground pulse beneath his feet, as if the heartbeat of the earth had quickened in fear, urging him to move, to run, to follow the call of destiny before the darkness reclaimed the last traces of light. The forest that had once been still now stirred with frantic energy, leaves rustled without wind, trees bent toward him as though pointing the way, and the air shimmered faintly with ancient magic awakened after centuries of slumber. He tightened his grip around the Dawnshard, its warmth spreading into his veins like liquid fire, strengthening his resolve even as doubt whispered treacherously in the back of his mind. Could he really reach the Heartspire in time? Could he truly save a world already on its knees? Could he face the shadow scourge alone when even armies had fallen before it? Every doubt screamed inside him, but Eliera's fading voice echoed louder. Arl, find me when the world is safe. Those words wrapped around his heart like a vow carved into eternity. So he pushed forward, weaving through the trees as dusk deepened into night, each step crunching against the carpet of fallen leaves that glowed faintly with an eerie blue luminescence, a sign that the veil between worlds was thinning. Creatures of twilight slithered through the shadows, their eyes glinting with curiosity more than malice, but Arl knew not to trust anything born from fractured magic. Beauty and danger often wore the same skin in the wild remnants of the ancients. Soon, the forest opened into a vast clearing where the sky stretched wide, revealing the two pale moons rising side by side, an omen of approaching calamity. Legend said that when the twin moons aligned perfectly, the veil would weaken enough for both salvation and destruction to slip through. And tonight, Arl realized, was the beginning of that alignment. As he crossed the clearing, a cold wind spiraled around him, carrying whispers that did not belong to the world of the living. The air darkened, folding inward like a collapsing shadow, and then from that twisting darkness emerged a figure cloaked in ragged threads of night, its form shifting between human shape and something serpentine. Its presence extinguished warmth from the air, and even the Dawnshard dimmed, as if recoiling from its touch. The creature's voice dripped like molten iron, sharp and slow. Little echo bearer, it hissed, the Dawnshard does not belong in your hands. The veil must remain sealed. The world must remain silent. Arl's breath hitched, but he forced himself to stand tall. If the world stays silent, it dies, he said, though fear not at him. The creature's laugh rumbled like distant thunder. Death is kinder than what waits beyond the Lightwake's return. With a sudden lunge, the creature's shadowy tendrils whipped toward him, but the Dawnshard flared brilliantly, blasting a shockwave of pure radiance that tore through the darkness. The creature shrieked, its form dissolving into smoke that scattered across the night like dying embers. Arl collapsed to his knees, gasping, the Dawnshard burning hot enough to sear his skin, yet he refused to let go. That attack was only the first. The shadow scourge had found him, and it would not stop until the Dawnshard was extinguished, or until he was. He forced himself up, legs trembling but determined, and pressed onward into the night. Hours passed, or perhaps moments. Time twisted strangely beneath the influence of the Dawnshard. He followed the river that reflected the moons like twin lanterns guiding him along a silver trail, but the quiet beauty of the water did little to calm the storm inside him. As he walked, memories rose unbidden. His childhood among the echo bearers, the songs of energy they taught him to hear in the wind, the warmth of their sacred flames, and the day he lost them all, the day the shadow scourge descended upon their sanctuary like a living storm of sorrow. He remembered the sound, a deep, gut-wrenching roar that felt like the world itself was being torn apart. He remembered the light, the blinding flash as the elders sacrificed themselves to hide him from the darkness. He remembered the silence, the heavy, suffocating silence that followed, the kind only found in places where magic and life had died together. That silence haunted him still. But tonight, it fueled him. I won't let your sacrifices be in vain, he whispered into the night. The riverbank soon led him to a narrow canyon where ancient pillars rose like the spines of some colossal beast petrified by time. The carvings etched on them glowed faintly in the Dawnshard's presence, revealing depictions of echo-bearers performing the lightwake ritual, two figures standing at the summit of a mountain shaped like a spear piercing the heavens. The Heartspire. Arl touched the nearest pillar, and images flooded his mind. The Heartspire bathed in flames, the ancients battling the Shadow Scourge, the veil shattering into 1,000 crystalline shards that rained across the world, corrupting land and sky. His knees buckled beneath the sudden onslaught of memories, but he grit his teeth and endured the pain. "Show me what I need to know," he pleaded, and the pillar obeyed. This time the vision shifted, revealing Eliera trapped within a glowing cage formed by fissures of broken reality, her form flickering as though she were made of both light and shadow. She looked weakened, fading, her hands pressed against the barrier as she whispered Arl's name over and over like a prayer to a dying star. His heart clenched. She wasn't just an echo twin, she was a part of him, the missing half of his soul's resonance, the harmony to his discord. Without her, the Lightwake could not be restored, and without the Lightwake, the world had no future. With newfound resolve, he rose and continued deeper into the canyon until it opened into a vast cavern lit by shimmering pools of crystalline water. The reflections on the surface twisted into faces, some familiar, some alien, all watching him silently. A chill crawled up his spine as the whispers began again, but this time they weren't warnings or threats. They were pleas, voices of those lost to the Shadow Scourge. Their sorrow pressed into his mind, begging him not to fail, begging him not to let their suffering be for nothing. Arl knelt by one of the pools, letting the Dawnshard's light spread across the water. The reflections calmed, forming a single image, a path of glowing stones leading toward a distant peak crowned with swirling vortexes of light and darkness. The Heartspire awaited, but so did the final opposition. A rumble shook the cavern as cracks split across the walls, darkness seeped through the fractures like liquid shadow, and the temperature plummeted. The Shadow Scourge had returned, not as a single creature this time, but as a legion of whispering silhouettes crawling from the darkness, their red eyes igniting like dying suns. They were hungry, they were ancient, and they were furious. Arl stood tall, the Dawnshard blazing like a star in collapse, its energy surging through him with such force that it nearly knocked the breath from his lungs. "If this is where I fall," he whispered, "then I fall standing." The Shadow Scourge swarmed, their tendrils reaching out like claws of night, and Arl unleashed the Dawnshard's power in a torrent of radiant fire that tore through darkness, splitting the cavern with light so bright it felt like dawn itself had descended into the earth. The battle raged, light against shadow, hope against despair, one echo bearer against an army of darkness, and though Arl's strength waned, his spirit refused to break. He fought for Eliera, he fought for his people's memory, he fought for a world that had nearly forgotten how to hope. At last, with a final burst of light that shook the cavern to its core, the Shadow Scourge dissolved, retreating into cracks of the veil with shrieks of rage and agony. Arl collapsed to the ground, barely conscious, chest heaving, limbs trembling. But the Dawnshard pulsed gently, healing his wounds with its warm glow. He forced himself to stand. He had no time left to waste. The first phase of the moon alignment was nearly complete. He stumbled toward the cavern's far exit where the path of glowing stones awaited him, shimmering like a promise beneath the rising twin moons. "Hold on, Eliera," he whispered into the night. "I'm coming." And with that vow echoing through the canyon, Arl stepped onto the path that would either save the world, or witness its final dusk. "If you want." The night deepened as Arl followed the glowing stones upward, each step echoing against the silent cliffs of the mountain path, the cold wind slicing through his clothes like knives forged from forgotten winters, carrying with it the faint cries of ancient spirits who once guarded the Heartspire. Yet he moved forward, fueled by the Dawnshard's pulsing warmth in his hand and the memory of Eliera's trembling voice calling him from beyond the veil, urging him to reach the summit before the alignment of the twin moons sealed their fate forever. The higher he climbed, the thinner the air became, until his breaths came sharp and ragged, and the world below him shrank into a patchwork of dying forests and cracked plains that glimmered faintly under the moonlight like the bones of a wounded giant stretched across the earth. At last, after hours that felt like days, he reached a ridge where the entire Heartspire revealed itself, a towering spear of obsidian stone rising from the mountain's peak, crowned by swirling rings of energy, one of blinding white light, the other a storm of blackened shadow, locked in an eternal dance as the veil thinned around them, trembling with the pressure of worlds colliding. The moment Arl stepped toward the spire, the air trembled, and a shockwave burst outward, nearly knocking him off his feet, the Heartspire recognized him, but so did the darkness. The ground cracked, and from the fissures crawled tendrils of the Shadow Scourge, thicker and more vicious than before, weaving together to form a humanoid figure tall as a giant and shaped from swirling night. Its eyes were twin voids, and when it spoke, its voice reverberated like an earthquake. "You come seeking salvation," it growled, "but all you bring is ruin." Arl felt fear coil around his throat, threatening to choke him, but he tightened his grip on the Dawnshard. "I'm here to restore the Lightwake," he said, though his voice shook. "I'm here to save the world." The creature let out a thunderous laugh, each echo cracking the stone beneath them. "Save it from what?" it sneered. "From itself. From the greed of mortals who tore the veil apart. From the ancients who unleashed forces they never understood. You seek to fix what must be allowed to rot." With a roar, the creature lunged, slamming a shadowed fist into the ground where Arl had stood just moments before, splintering stone into shards that spiraled into the air like lethal daggers. Arl jumped aside, the Dawnshard flaring to shield him with a burst of radiant energy, the light clashing with the creature's darkness in a crackling surge that illuminated the entire peak. The battle erupted like a storm. Arl hurled beams of light, each blast fueled by his dwindling strength, while the Shadow Scourge countered with waves of darkness that twisted the air into screaming torrents. The ground shook beneath them, the Heartspire pulsing violently as if urging him onward, desperate for the ritual to begin. But Arl was faltering. The Dawnshard's glow dimmed with each strike he released, and pain seared through his muscles like fire. Just as the creature raised its massive arm for a finishing blow, a whisper drifted through the wind, soft, trembling, familiar. "Arl," Eliara's voice. The sound filled him with a surge of strength that shattered the despair trying to root itself in his heart. He dodged the attack, skidding across the stone until he reached the base of the Heartspire, where faint glyphs glowed with the same silver-blue hue as Eliara's eyes. The Lightwake ritual. He placed the Dawnshard onto the central glyph, and the stone beneath him ignited with a radiant explosion of light, spiraling upward around the spire in ribbons of luminous energy. But the Shadow Scourge shrieked, unleashing a flood of darkness that crashed against the ritual circle, struggling to break it. "Light cannot return," it roared. "It will tear the world apart." Arl braced himself, screaming against the storm of shadows as the Dawnshard's energy surged through him. And then, the sky split open. A tear of blinding brilliance ripped across the heavens, revealing Eliara's form suspended within the veil, her hands pressed against the barrier, her body flickering like a lantern in a hurricane. "Arl," she whispered, tears of light streaming down her cheeks. "You've reached the Heartspire, but we must complete the ritual together." Arl felt his heart wrench. "I can't reach you," he cried. The veil is weakened," she said, her voice growing strong despite her fading form. "Call to me, not with words, with your spirit." He closed his eyes, focusing past the pain, past the fear, reaching for the resonance that tied their souls together, the bond forged long before either of them was born. He felt it, a soft, trembling pulse, like two hearts beating in sync across worlds. And then, the veil shattered. Eliara burst through in a radiant wave, her feet touching the ground as the Dawnshard glowed brighter than ever, its energy merging with hers, twin streams of light spiraling around them like dancing flames. Together, they stood before the Heartspire, their hands intertwining as the ritual began. Light surged upward, ripping through the swirling darkness above, while the Shadow Scourge screamed, its form unraveling under the power of two echo bearers united at last. The Lightwake exploded from the spire like a reborn star, flooding the world with waves of pure energy that healed the fractured earth, mended the broken sky, and sealed the veil with a harmony so powerful that even the shadows bowed before it. When the brilliance finally faded, the world was quiet, peaceful, alive. Arl opened his eyes and saw Eliara standing beside him, exhausted but smiling, her hand still holding his. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it," he replied. They turned to gaze at the horizon where the first true dawn in centuries broke across the world, painting the sky with colors long forgotten, gold, rose, sapphire, and fire. The darkness had finally retreated. And with the world safe, their spirits finally whole, Arl and Eliara walked down the mountain hand in hand, ready to rebuild the future from the ashes of the past, together.